Welcome, everybody. This is me, Captain Ron, along with my trusty First Officer and Chief Technical Officer, Dieter Staudinger from Toronto, just south of Toronto, actually, and my ace assistant captain. Fortunately, we never fly together. The most dangerous thing they say is two captains in the same airplane. So, but we try to manage that here. Eric Larson. Thanks, Eric, for coming back tonight. I know you had a lot of stuff, and you were on a little vacation again, if I remember right.
So, that was pretty fun. My first road trip in 1,000 years.
Okay, I can see the first growth. That's how I know you haven't been flying. Yeah, yeah. And that's a thing in aviation. The official reason is that it breaks the seal on the oxygen mask if we have to use it. So facial hair is not authorized when.
And there's another good reason is for when you walk through the airport, your buddies see you and they've been working and they know you haven't. So you make them feel bad.
That's right.
And you feel more smug. So you feel obligated to do that for smugness.
Absolutely. Well, this is our weekly show for all of you who have a fear of flying, or those of you who know somebody who has a fear of flying and are trying to get help for them. And lastly, of course, just anybody who's out there and loves to talk airplanes and flying, which is our passion as well. Our goal is to change the way you think about flying, because once you do that, you change your story, you change your life. Tonight, we're going to talk about, we have a poll question coming up here, and there's a link to the poll question. If you click on that link in the chat box, I believe Dieter put it in there, is where you put it. Is that true, Dieter? Have I got
That's
that right?
correct. I'm putting it right now into the chat. So you can just click on the link. It's just 3 questions. Jeremy, Jim, hey, how you guys doing? So we're just doing it a little different. You don't have to put in any of your information. We just, it's easier to record the answers. And so we're gonna just post that link.
And I think we'll actually be able to get some data out of it here by the end of the show, right?
Yeah, good. Absolutely.
Yeah, because Facebook doesn't lend itself to taking a live count there, and we're frankly curious about this. How you answer the questions there. We had a 201, our last 201 of the year here in Phoenix, and it was a huge success. It was a small class, but it was just a particularly joyful experience for me. Just a great bunch of people, very relaxed. I had a cool special guest who's going to come on as our guest in the next few weeks there, one of our past graduates. And she came by and gave such a moving and compelling testimony about how she has changed her life and how she changed her story about fear of flying. It's really incredible. It's an incredible story, and we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna invite her back in here. So okay. So what I want to do tonight is we want to talk a little bit about about what happened last Saturday. So we had a group of people, a small intimate group here, and we ended up flying to LA and back. And if you haven't, you're going to see more of this in the future. We got some surprises coming up in the month of December here. E plus R equals O is something. It's a formula that we use. E is your event or experience that happens to you. R is the way you respond to that, and O is the outcome, the state of mind or the state of being that you have. And it all represents it's not what happens to us in life, it's the stories we tell ourselves that make life what it is. We use stories to explain things. That's the nature of being human. We think, most of us, if you're like me, you think that you form a belief based on facts. No, you form beliefs because you believe them. And then you look for facts in your environment to support that. And sometimes it happens to be facts are facts. And sometimes it's, even though you have 1,000 people that believe the same thing, it's still not based on facts. And fear flying is rife with a lot of things, a lot of myths, a lot of misstatements and things that people take to be facts that aren't factual. And we use stories to explain things, to add clarity to our life. Somehow, sometimes, however, instead of providing clarity, they keep us stuck. And that's certainly the case for fearful flyers. And it's really what was manifest here Saturday morning with the people that came to the class here. We assume that events and circumstances change our what shape our stories, but it's really the opposite. It's the stories that we tell ourselves about the circumstances and events that shape our lives, as I mentioned before. And those stories can really mess us up, especially when it comes to fear of flying. But if you change the narrative, it can make all the difference. And that's what happened on Saturday. You got a group of people that came in on Saturday morning. One hadn't flown in 20 years. Another hadn't flown in 30 years. They spent 4 hours and came in absolutely believing that they were not going to be able to do that in the afternoon. And somehow they found the confidence in just that time we spent together. And it was life-changing for them. So, stories have two themes to them. One is freedom and the other is change. We believe we have a lot of freedom when it comes to solving our problems until we come up against the problem at hand. Again, like fear of flying, like turbulence, like closing the door and feeling, that I'm trapped in that airplane. And it's powerlessness and helplessness that causes us to feel that we've lost our freedom. There's a cartoon that I saw once. It has a prisoner. He's grabbing onto the bars and he's shaking him, saying, "Let me out, let me out." And then the next frame, it backs up and you can see all he's holding is the bars and the door to the cell. There's nothing around him. So he could just turn and walk around the bars if he wanted to. But that's kind of like what happens with fear of flying, is we end up being prisoners in our own minds. And change, even positive change, is giving up a lot of or is a lot of loss. And what is it primarily we lose? It's a loss of the familiar. The hardest thing about change is giving up what's familiar. So we're gonna have some things coming up here that we're gonna talk about in the month of December, and about how you're going to get the confidence to get the success that everybody else has been having when they come to classes here. Okay, we had a couple of incidents here, as you know.
Ron, before we jump into the aviation news, let's make sure that you talk about the poll question. I just put it up on the screen.
Okay.
So now everybody will see.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So this is what you're going to find when you go to that link there. We find that most of the fearful flyers who contact us, and this is what I found over the last 32 years, they come to us with fewer than 30 days before their next flight. Actually, it's almost half of those people, 39%, have fewer than 7 days before they have to fly. And another large percentage of them, it's even worse. It's between 24 and 36 hours before they have to get on an airplane. One I remember in particular is a fellow out of Miami at a business flight. He needed to fly to LA the next day and then on to, which is about 5.5 hours. And then he needed to go on to New Zealand, another 14 hours. So here he is setting himself up for almost 20 hours in the airplane and terrified to fly. Ended up, we did an hour coaching. He got the FearlessFlight kit and he was successful. And why was he successful? Because he got enough information to give him the confidence that he was going to be able to manage his story on the airplane, because his story prior to that time was that he couldn't imagine being on the airplane without losing control. And that's a very common story that we've talked about from time to time. So we want to know, do you have a flight coming up between now and the holidays? And if you do, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your level of confidence that you are going to make that flight and it's going to be a better experience than last time? 1 to 10, what's your confidence level that you're going to make that flight and make it a better flight than last time? And the last one is, this is what we've got coming up here. We've been working on this for some time, and it looks like we're going to be able to get it together and launch it this month, or in December rather. Would you be interested in an online group coaching program that's based on our success that we found with the 201 classes in Phoenix and the LA area? We just have come to the point where we are so frustrated that we only reach just a few people here at the live classes in Phoenix, and we realize the information that we pass out in those classes is more than enough to get people that confidence that they can not only make their next flight, but make it a better experience. And we know that we can now do that online by having interactive classes with you and taking advantage of the technology here. I had great letter from Dottie, one of my past Fearful Flyers, and she wrote just a great review of the book, and she just said some very kind words, and we'll probably bring that up next week there. But anyway, so now if you can, just please go over there and do that. If you're watching the show, the replay, we're going to leave that survey up for a few days here, so feel free to go over there and do that as well. Now, time to move on to the specialty here with Captain Eric, and that is the Aviation News Roundup. We had it's winter weather out there, and the question that comes up all the time: what about snow? What about ice? Is it more dangerous out there? Well, and then you hear about incidents in the news, and we had a couple of them that where the aircraft departed the runway. And yeah, you got any order for them, Eric? Or we can just break them down and talk about them as you bring them up there. So what'd you find out?
Well, it's as we suspected. A lot of this stuff, the reporting says, will always say it's some, and I'm paraphrasing, but some in some format, the airplane skidded off the runway after landing.
And I don't know about you, but to me, when I hear skidded off the runway, that means like I'm in my car in the ditch. I grew up in the Midwest, and that's the way it went. It wasn't like you backed into a hole or anything. It was like you were now in peril, and now you had to tell your dad, and he had to come and help you dig it out and pull you out of the ditch.
So the immediate vision is that it went all the way down to the end of the runway, skidded off the end, smashed all the employee cars in the employee parking lot, ended up in the transmission shop across the street. And 99% of the time, that's not what happened. And that doesn't appear to be what happened on these three. We had 3 incidents, one a regional jet landing in O'Hare in pretty tough weather. And while exiting the runway onto a taxiway, slipped off the side of the taxiway. And the taxiways can be very, very treacherous. They are cleared, but they aren't, don't have as much ash and all that stuff that the runways have smeared on them. The tractive effort is less. And if you attempt to make an exit on what we call a high-speed turnoff in the winter at anywhere near the speed that you make in the summer, the end result is you go off the side of it. And that was one of them. Another one was a 737 in Chicago. And I believe it was the same thing. The news reporting said skidded off the runway. A passenger reported, "I saw grass, so I assumed we were done." Well, if you see grass, it's not because you went off the end of the runways. That had to be another taxiway slide. And the third one was in Omaha, and it's unclear because one phrase said while exiting the runway, and the other one said off the end of the runway. So we don't know. But as Captain Ron said, and he is right, if you have a nice summer night and you're going somewhere and there's no traffic, do you drive the same way as if it's foggy and snowy and the road's very slick and you can't see as well? Which time do you exercise more caution, and which time presents a greater hazard? So these aren't accidents by any means. They're what we call incidents because of the level of damage. And in all 3 of them, there were 0 passenger injuries. And all the passengers left the airplane under their own power. And there might have been a wind chill factor because of the distance they had to walk or ride a bus, but they were all fine and ambulatory.
And I saw a couple of the TV interviews that they did with some of the people, and typically when you have a turbulence aftermath, and they got people that get off the airplane, when they're all shaking and all that. These people weren't even excited when they did this. Just very casual. All it was is they ended up getting off down air stairs and into waiting vehicles and stuff, and went to the airport that way. The other thing about it is that I thought of, Eric, because while you're talking about this, is that probably the most challenging time for a pilot is during the transition. So when it's just starting to snow, when it's starting to pick up, even before they start snow removal and operations, things like that. And so what happens is it makes everything white. So you can see the runway behind me here. It doesn't look like that, right? When you have, an inch of snow on it, it all goes white, and then you add the dark to it. Sometimes the lighting is a little bit more obscured, and yeah, it makes it more hazardous. But from our point of view, you just have to be more vigilant. And I want to have a quick word about the three crews that are involved here. Let me tell you what that does to your whole day. It ruins it completely. It can be so benign, nothing significant happened, no damage to the equipment, no injuries or anything like that. But they will be tested, evaluated, and oftentimes what they'll have is a special training session or something like that if it turns out that there was any questions about the judgment that they use. And the other thing about it is when you turn off, if you turn short of where the taxiway is and you leave the hard surface of the runway and the taxiway environment there, that's not concrete. You got a big old heavy landing gear out there. And what happens is it sinks down in the mud. So that's the other reason why once that happens, nobody moves the airplane, because we don't want to damage it any further. And so that's why they stop right where they are and shut down that runway at the very least, and get the people out and go on about our merry business. Anybody freaked out there, Dieter?
Yeah, I wanna just I'm gonna just quickly remind everybody that we have our poll question today is actually we have a link that I pinned to the chat. So if you're watching that video right here and we're not live anymore, you can still go there. And basically what we're asking is, I'm just going to pull it up here. We're asking you, do you have a flight coming up between now and the holidays? And the reason why this question is valid for us is mostly because about 3/4 of Fearful Flyers tend to contact us with less than a month before their next flight. And so we want to just validate with you, the viewer, how is that for you? And if you have a flight coming up and you are a Fearful Flyer, where on a scale of, I'm going to say 1 to 10, because 0 would really mean that you are either a Zen Buddhist monk or you're unconscious or dead. So
you're definitely one of our Fearful Flyers. If you're
yes, exactly. If you're at a 0, call us. I definitely have some questions for you. But anywhere between 1 and 10, where you're at in terms of your level of confidence that you can go on that flight and it'll be a good experience for you. And to kind of lead into that, whether you're confident or not, if we brought a more intimate group coaching type of program into the online space, because not everybody can join us in either Phoenix or Los Angeles, would you be interested in that? And so if you just click on that link in chat, 3 questions, less than 30 seconds. And I do have, and I want to put that up yet. Ron, do you see that?
I do. Cool.
So right now about
I'm thinking about calling. I got a name for it too. It's called Cleared for Takeoff Preparation in Your Pajamas. You can do it at home in your jammies, and you don't even have to drag yourself out in that nasty weather that some of you have up in the Northeast right now. So that's the beauty about webinars and stuff, is you can do all that. Now, if you do volunteer to be on screen there, we'll make sure that we only get you from the neck up there. Actually, you'll be in control of that. So but that's the beauty of it. And we're ready for you. We've been working on this for a long time. You may recall I said back in the middle of the summer, I said we're working on some online deliveries here, and we just really had it. We just can't stand anymore having all these people they're out there and can't get to Phoenix, and for some reason don't want to get on an airplane and come down to our classes. So we're gonna
what's up with that?
And we're gonna try to. Eric promises that he'll come in his best pajamas if he helps us out here. So
and you don't have to feel bad if you're in your jammies, because half the people in the airport are in their pajamas too. The difference is yours will be more comfortable, and people won't be making cell phone videos of you. They won't. You'll be indivisible, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fill that out, complete that survey for us, give us a little bit of information, and we'll be coming back at you here. You're gonna be reading about that, hearing about it next week, more details, and Dieter's working on some promotional stuff for that.
Yeah, and I also want to just acknowledge Tracy. I want to acknowledge you taking the time and your comment. And Tracy said basically she's really appreciative of the way you, Captain Ron, and Captain Eric are breaking down, the things that are happening in the aviation space and how, what did she say? With more reality and less sensationalism. So
absolutely,
and that's really the key, right?
Yeah, really. That's why we do the aviation news every week, because there's going to be something every week, and I guarantee you that the longer we go without anything, the more sensational is going to be the write-up. And it's only a matter of time until we have a winter storm like is going through up there. How much snow are you getting up there, Dieter?
We almost got a foot, actually.
Yeah. So Toronto Airport's probably not the place to be.
I honestly, I don't really know. I just remember from the article that we researched that they canceled 480 flights at O'Hare, which represented about 15% of their total flights, and about 540-ish, I'm gonna say, flights were actually delayed. So it's sure, weather has a massive impact on operations, but I love actually flying out in the winter, just because to me, I mean, there's so much precision in how an airport runs. I really want to put up some videos that we got from another Fearful Fly in our group, and it's basically they followed I think for a whole season different aspects of London Heathrow Airport, and and I mean, you guys know this, but most people don't realize there's always somebody checking the runways, driving up and down the runway, checking. What are they checking for, Eric? Somebody lost their wallet, or what are they checking for?
Well, that's a bonus for those guys if they do find a wallet, and if they do, they would never admit it. But what they're doing is they have a vehicle and they'll drive it at very high speeds down the runway and slam on the brakes. And they have systems in there that measure the coefficient of friction between the tires of the runways, and they use the Greek letter mu to refer to that. So they say, so they can run down the runway at a high rate of speed, slam on the brakes, and get an index that reflects to us what our braking ability is going to be based on what the skid mobile has gone down the runway and found out. So we have a good idea if it's really slick or the braking is, we usually go from good, fair, poor, or nil, and we have numerical measurements that correspond to that. So we have a good idea from what the vehicle has done, what our tractive effort is on the runway too. Should we be landing or have to reject a takeoff or something like that? And that's what they're doing, continuous updating on that with the vehicle.
You know what, Eric? What we should do is I want you to get, we've been trying to get you to do some recording in the cockpit there, but what I'd love to have you do is get an ATIS on that. If you can get one somewhere where there is some changing conditions, whether it's rain or whether it's snow, some kind of precept, and just to what that is ATIS is a service. It's a continuous broadcast on a channel that we use, we can access in the cockpit, automatic terminal information service, and it's constantly reciting what the temperature, the pressure, altitude, and the cloud conditions and the visibility is at the airport. And if there's any information that's of importance, like notices that we need to know about parts of the runway that might not be available to us, and in particular the runway condition reading, that mu that Eric was talking about. So anyway,
I got there's a viewer question.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, Eric, that you know the answer to that. Basically,
you'll have an answer, I guarantee you.
Jim Duke is wondering how many sets of tires these guys are burning through in a year of doing that kind of service to you guys, the pilots.
He's right. No idea. None.
But
I suppose the worse the braking is, the easier it is on the tires. If the guy's going down there 100 miles an hour and the braking's really good and he slams on the brakes, that probably isn't good for tire longevity. And I have no idea how many they run through. And obviously, they use a lot more in Toronto than they do in Albuquerque.
That's probably
that's another thing. I've never seen that vehicle. I mean, I've seen them out there and stuff, but we have to find somebody and we'll get some information on that. That'd be another.
Oh, you mean you've never seen the Skidmobile up close?
No, I've never seen the actual equipment and how they do that. That'd be kind of cool to get it to actually get that information.
Okay, I wanna do a quick shout out to Susan Taylor. She's a first-time viewer. Glad to have you with us. So this is Fearless Flight Live. If you haven't seen, we do have a poll question, and a link is in somewhere in the thread. It should be pinned up on top actually. And basically, we want to know from you, the viewer, do you have a flight coming up between now and the holidays? And if you do, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you right now that you're gonna do well on that flight? And then there's one more question, and that is, what kind of support would you most enjoy? And let me just look here. Okay, sometimes can we talk about when and why they turned the planes around in Ontario, California, takeoffs and landings? And
is she asking why we land and take off different directions, or?
Well, Tracy, actually, if you could clarify that, the question reads like this. Sometimes can we talk about when and why they turn around planes in Ontario, California? And then in brackets, she just has takeoffs and landings. So I'm not sure if the question is like,
that must be it.
Okay.
And think about it, Ron. I mean, our whole lives, you almost always take off and land west in Ontario, unless there's Santa Ana winds coming through the Banning Pass. Then you would have an east flow, but that would be a highly unusual operation for them.
Yeah, she did. She said yes when it's windy, I think. So that's a great question, because Ron, can you just, I think that was really helpful for me. Why don't you ever take off ideally with the wind in your back? Because
it's confusing. When I was a little boy, I always thought, when I played with gliders and stuff, I always thought, well, you'd want to make it go with the wind. That would be less resistance. No, when we got big engines like this, and you got your takeoff speed, you want to keep your takeoff speed as slow as possible. So imagine that runway behind me. The wind is coming toward my back. So I'm going to be faced in my airplane down that runway, and I'm always going to take off into the wind. So that means that, the airplane only senses the relative airspeed over the wing. So if I'm sitting on the runway and I had 50 miles an hour of wind behind me, my airspeed indicator up front is going to be showing 50 miles an hour before I even move. Okay. And if I only have to accelerate to 150 to take off, I only have to accelerate 100 miles per hour on top of the 50 with the wind, and now I get airborne. So that's why you'll see at Ontario, as Eric said, most of the time it's going toward the west, because the prevailing winds are from the west there. That's why the LAX, Los Angeles International, for the most part, you've always got that onshore flow with the winds. So they always take off to the west too. So that whole LA basin out there is generally a westerly flow, which means the winds are out of the west and we're going to take off toward the west. Okay. But rarely, or on occasion in Ontario, if you got Santa Ana winds coming down off the mountains there around Riverside and Banning Pass over by Palm Springs, then they'll turn around and they'll go to the other end of the runway and take off this way. And we'll have to get a video background to show something coming over my head. That was the thing to do. But anyway, so that, I hope that answers your question. It was Tracy that asked that?
Yeah, that was Tracy.
Yeah. And I want to, before we sign off here in just a couple of minutes, I want to say another shout out for our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather Facebook group.
Yeah.
It's growing every week, and we're getting some really good activity. Lots of people in there supporting each other. I jumped in there yesterday and today, a couple of people getting ready to fly. Going to be more and more over the holidays. It's a great resource to get support from people, because you just need to get your confidence up to get on that airplane and know it's going to be a better experience. And combine that with the program we got coming up here in December. We're going to get you ready to fly over Christmas. Big time in the year. I don't know, the airlines, I think they get about 15-20% of their business over the holidays here, or more even.
And
so,
you know, here's the thing. Even if you are in general not too worried about flying, or not too anxious, and I really mean that as a counselor, and you know, in my experience, the holidays can be extremely stressful.
yeah.
And you may or may not realize that that stress that you're experiencing may find its way onto, you know, airplanes and flying. And because one of the things that we hear a lot is people who used to fly either as teenagers, young adults, kids, and then over time, all of a sudden, it wasn't always an experience that they can pinpoint. Often it had some resemblance with why they would be afraid, but more often than not, people just don't even realize when they got afraid. And often fear of flying is one of those places where, you know, we tend to put our anxieties and our pressures, and that could be the case for you as well. So I just want to reassure all of our fearful flyers that if your anxiety is a little bit more heightened during the travel season over the holidays, don't be too hard on yourself, because you're contending with a lot more anxiety all around. And so I just want you to realize you're not regressing or anything. It just may be a little bit more intense than the rest of the year. So, and I do have that. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
I was just saying that leads us into a good place to wind the
Yeah.
show up for tonight. And that is, again, changing the way you think is about changing your story. And that is what happens. And it happens in as little as 4 hours in a class here. So whether it's anxiety over the holidays, just because you're getting together with family, and family can be the best and the worst sometimes, or whether it's your fear of flying, the solution is the same. And it's the story that you tell yourself that's really causing the interruptions in that. And another thing about the group there, about the birds of a feather, is that we're getting a lot of people. One of the best things is that people who are overcoming and having successes are coming back and sharing their experiences and helping other people. So we want to leave you with that. And any closing words, Eric?
No, I just, when you were talking about how rewarding it was getting the people on the airplane, and it is, and when we've had these live classes, we got to be batting in the high 90s, in the high 900s in terms of percentage of getting people on. And
Yeah.
when they show up at the class, they're thinking there is absolutely zero chance that they're going to get on the airplane, and they almost all do, and are very happy they did.
And I've had people over the years, just that they can't believe, like the fellow I mentioned in Miami, an hour of content talking about his beliefs and the stories he tells himself, and working through that. And then tools like the Fearless Flight Kit is all it took to get him the confidence that he needed. And that's all you need. You need confidence in the airplane and flying, and you need confidence in yourself. And the confidence in yourself is really what I'm seeing is the most important change that people need to do. So come back with us next week. We'll be talking. We'll have more details by that time about this program that the coaching class that we're having coming up in December. And until then, this is Captain Ron and Dieter and Eric and Fearless Flight Live. So have a great week, and stay buttoned up if you're up there in the Northeast there. So, all right, everybody, have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.